Among all the gods of Asgard, none shone more brightly than Balder, the son of Odin and Frigg. He was the god of light, beauty, innocence, and joy, beloved by gods and mortals alike. His presence was said to bring peace where there was anger, calm where there was fear, and laughter where there was sorrow. Where Thor was thunder, and Odin was wisdom, Balder was the radiance of the sun, a reflection of the world's hope. Balder was tall and radiant, his skin glowing with a light that seemed not of this earth. His hair gleamed like fine gold, and his voice carried warmth like music. He was wise in counsel, gentle in heart, and pure in spirit, a being untouched by malice. Even his enemies, the giants, admitted that none could hate Balder, for he embodied everything noble and fair. He dwelt in Breidablik, a hall so bright and pure that no impurity or falsehood could ever enter. Its pillars gleamed, its walls shone, and it was said that no place in all the 9 realms was as sacred or beautiful. It was there that gods and goddesses often gathered, for Balder's presence itself was a blessing. Yet, even in the golden halls of Asgard, shadows stirred. For Balder was not merely a god of joy, he was also a figure of fate. Odin had many sons, each destined for greatness or destruction, but Balder's destiny was the most sorrowful of all. For though he was loved above all others, it was prophesied that his life would be cut short, and his death would mark the beginning of the world's decline toward Ragnarok. The first signs came in Balder's dreams. Night after night, he saw visions of death, of darkness swallowing his light, of falling into hell's cold embrace. When he spoke of these dreams, all of Asgard fell into grief. For none could imagine a world without Balder, and yet all knew the visions of the gods could not be false. Frigg, his mother, was overcome with dread. She resolved that nothing in the world must ever harm her beloved son. With a mother's determination, she set out across the 9 realms, extracting oaths from every creature and everything, from fire and water, stone and metal, beast and tree, that none would raise hand or fang or flame against Balder. And everywhere she went, the beings of the world swore loyalty. For who would wish harm upon Balder, the joy of gods and men? But fate is never so easily undone, and in the smallest of things, destiny hides. For in her search, Frigg overlooked one slender, fragile plant, the lowly mistletoe, growing pale and unnoticed in the shadows. And thus the stage was set for the tragedy of the shining god, the story that would wound Asgard and bring sorrow to the hearts of all the gods. Balder's dreams of death cast a shadow over Asgard. Though Frigg had gained promises from all things never to harm him, the gods still sought to ease their hearts with play. They gathered in the fields before Breidablik and made a sport of throwing weapons and stones at Balder. Arrows, spears, and even great rocks were hurled at him, but each fell harmlessly aside. Blades bent, stones bounced, fire refused to scorch him. The gods laughed and cheered, marveling at his invulnerability. It was a joyous game, a reassurance that Balder was safe from fate. But Loki, the trickster, stood apart, his eyes sharp with envy. Though he often brought chaos with mischief, this time his heart grew dark with malice. He could not bear the sight of Balder's perfection, his unbroken radiance. If all adored Balder, then Loki would be the one to strike him down. Disguising himself as an old woman, Loki went to Frigg. With feigned concern, he asked about the oaths she had taken from all things in the world. Frigg, unsuspecting, spoke freely, "All things have sworn never to harm Balder, all except the mistletoe." It seemed too young, too small, too harmless to ask. That was all Loki needed. Slipping away, he found the pale plant in the shadows, and with cruel hands he fashioned a dart, slender and sharp. Though slight in form, it carried the weight of doom. He returned to the games of the gods, where Balder still stood laughing as weapons clattered harmlessly around him. Loki approached Hr, Balder's blind twin brother, who stood apart in sorrow, unable to join the game. With honeyed words, Loki whispered, "Why do you not honor your brother as the others do? Here, take this dart. I will guide your hand so you too may share in the joy." Trusting, and blind to the trick, Hr took the dart. Guided by Loki, he cast it into the air. The mistletoe flew true, piercing Baldur's heart. Silence fell across Asgard. Baldur gasped, his light dimmed, and he collapsed upon the ground. The god stared in horror. No weapon had ever harmed him, yet this frail dart had struck him down. The laughter ended, replaced by cries of grief. Odin's heart broke, for he knew this was the first step toward Ragnarok. Frigg wept bitter tears, pleading with the gods to bring her son back. But Baldur lay still, his radiance fading, his breath gone. The god seized Hr in fury, but he was innocent, a pawn of Loki's malice. Their rage turned instead toward the trickster, but Loki had already fled. Baldur, the most beloved of all gods, was dead. And with his fall, joy itself seemed to vanish from the 9 realms. After Baldur's death, grief fell upon Asgard like a shadow that could not be lifted. Odin wept for his son, Frigg's sorrow knew no end, and even the mighty Thor felt the sting of a world grown colder. Yet hope remained, for the gods resolved to appeal to Hel, the dark goddess of the underworld, to release Baldur from her icy halls. Odin, wise in magic, sent the messenger god Hermr on a perilous journey. Mounted upon Sleipnir, Odin's 8-legged horse, Hermr rode at top speed across the rainbow bridge, Bifrost, which quaked under the weight of grief and destiny. Through realms of fire and frost, through shadowed forests and barren plains, he journeyed for 9 long nights until at last he reached the gates of Hel, grim and silent, where the air itself seemed frozen. There, Hermr begged Hel for mercy. Baldur, the beloved of the gods, has been taken too soon. Release him, and Asgard will be restored to joy. Hel, her eyes cold as the depths of the underworld, regarded him with stillness. He is mine, she said, but I will grant him to the living if every being in the 9 realms, great and small, weeps for him. Hermr rode back with the message. Hope surged among the gods. From the tallest mountains to the deepest valleys, they summoned humans, giants, animals, and even stones, pleading with all creation to mourn Baldur. Tears flowed like rivers, sorrow filled the air, and for a time it seemed even the harshest hearts would bend to grief. But Loki, ever the trickster, would not allow joy to return. Disguised as an old giantess, he crept among the mourners, hiding the lowly mistletoe, the very plant that had caused Baldur's death. When Hel's test was complete, all had wept for the shining god, except for one small, overlooked plant. Because of Loki's deceit, Baldur could not leave the underworld. The god's sorrow deepened. They had come so close to restoring what was lost, yet fate held fast, unyielding. Baldur remained in Hel, beyond the reach of sunlight, in the shadowed halls where his radiance could not shine. Still, hope persisted. It was foretold that after Ragnarok, Baldur would rise again, returning to a renewed world, a symbol of rebirth, light, and the triumph of goodness over the darkness that had claimed him. Until that time, the gods mourned, and Asgard's halls remained haunted by the absence of their brightest, purest light. Long before Baldur fell, the god of light was haunted by visions that shook even the hearts of Asgard. Night after night, he dreamt of darkness swallowing the realms, of shadows creeping over the golden halls, and of a world silenced by grief. In his dreams, Baldur saw himself lying cold and still, the laughter of gods stilled, the beauty of the earth fading into sorrow. Disturbed, he went to his father, Odin, the all-seeing. Odin, who knew the mysteries of fate, listened to Baldur's recounting with deep concern. He closed his one eye, casting his gaze into the depths of time, and confirmed that these were not mere phantoms of sleep, they were omens, glimpses of a future written by the threads of destiny. Baldur's death would come, and its shadow would reach every corner of the 9 realms. Frigg, Baldur's mother, was stricken with fear. She vowed to protect her son at any cost. Setting aside her grief, she traveled through every realm. To the forests and mountains, to the rivers and oceans, to the stones and metals of the world. From every living creature and inanimate thing, she exacted a sacred oath, that none would harm Baldur. Fire, water, iron, stone, trees, beasts, none could lift a finger against him. Everywhere she went, beings swore loyalty, for none could deny the goddess' power or the purity of her intent. For a time, Asgard breathed easier. Balder walked among the gods with joy, and no blade nor flame nor claw could touch him. The 9 realms rejoiced in his presence. Yet the dreams persisted. Balder spoke them openly to Odin and Frigg, hoping that foresight might prevent disaster. "I am safe," the god said, "for all things have sworn to protect you. Nothing can harm you." But even as they comforted him, they could not erase the chill of fate. It was in these moments of seeming security that Loki plotted. The trickster, forever resentful of Balder's perfection, watched with envy as joy radiated from the god. Frigg's oaths covered nearly everything, but in her fear and haste, she had overlooked a single, fragile plant, the mistletoe, pale and unassuming, hidden in shadow. Thus, the dreams Balder had could not be avoided. Even the vigilance of gods and goddesses, even the most careful preparations, could not thwart destiny. The mistletoe, small and overlooked, became the instrument of tragedy, and the visions of death that haunted Balder's sleep were fulfilled in a single, fateful moment. Balder's dreams, though sorrowful, revealed the inexorable truth of Norse fate. Even the most beloved, the most radiant, the most protected, could not escape the designs of destiny. The warnings, though heeded, only made the grief more profound, for they showed that the thread of life could be cut with the lightest touch, and that the brightest soul could fall. Balder's death plunged Asgard into grief so deep that even the walls of the golden halls seemed to weep. His light, once a radiant presence among the gods, was extinguished, and the laughter of the divine court was replaced with silence and sorrow. Odin, father of gods, walked the halls alone, his mind heavy with visions of what was to come. Thor, mighty and fierce, smashed stones and struck the pillars of Asgard, yet even his thunder could not shake the weight of despair. Frigg, heartbroken, wandered endlessly, her tears like rivers flowing over the world, mourning the son she had sought to protect from fate itself. The gods, desperate to undo what had been done, resolved that Balder must be returned. Herm, brave and steadfast, was sent to Hel, the cold realm of the dead, to plead with the goddess of the underworld. He rode Sleipnir across the Bifrost, past fiery chasms and frozen wastelands, finally arriving at Hel's bleak gates. There, he found the dark goddess, her presence like ice upon the soul, yet he entreated her with all the love and desperation of the gods. "Release Balder," he begged, "and joy will return to Asgard." Hel, calm and immovable, listened to Herm's plea. "He is mine," she said, "but I will give him back if every being in the 9 realms, great and small, weeps for him." Hope returned to the gods. They sent messengers across the worlds, summoning humans, giants, animals, and even inanimate beings to mourn Balder. Mountains groaned, rivers swelled with tears, forests shook with sorrow, and the skies seemed heavy with mourning. All wept, all lamented, all mourned the shining god, all, that is, except for the small mistletoe that had caused his death. Loki, ever cunning and cruel, had hidden it, disguised as an old woman. Because one being did not weep, Hel's condition was not met. Balder remained in the cold halls of the dead, and the gods' efforts were in vain. The sorrow of Asgard grew unbearable. The gods, usually mighty and fearless, were rendered helpless by grief. Even the bravest, like Thor, could not strike against death itself. Odin's wisdom could not undo the bonds of fate, and Frigg's devotion could not bring back her son. Loki's malice had triumphed, and yet it was the inexorable law of destiny that had allowed it. Thus, the gods learned a harsh truth: even the most beloved, even the most protected, could be taken. The failure to bring Balder back marked the beginning of a shadowed path toward Ragnarok, when the world itself would tremble. And though hope still lingered in prophecy, in the hearts of the gods there was only sorrow, a grief so deep that it seemed Asgard would never again know the joy that Balder had brought. Though Balder lay in the shadowed halls of Hel, the light he had embodied never truly vanished from the minds of gods and mortals alike. Even in death, his presence lingered, a reminder of goodness, justice, and the beauty of life itself. Prophecies whispered among the Norns foretold that his time would come again. In the cataclysm of Ragnarok, when fire and frost would clash, when the mighty and the humble alike would face their fates, Baldur's light would rise anew. The gods, aware of these prophecies, held tightly to hope, though their sorrow was profound. They spoke of Baldur often, remembering his laughter, his fairness, his unyielding grace. Odin, though burdened with the knowledge of the final battle, often spoke to the young gods of Baldur's virtues, teaching them that even in despair, the memory of goodness could endure. Thor, who had felt the sting of loss most sharply, guarded the halls with renewed purpose, knowing that the bright future promised by Baldur's return justified every thunderous strike and heroic deed. Among mortals, too, Baldur's legend persisted. Tales of his beauty, wisdom, and kindness were recounted in long winter nights, inspiring courage and moral guidance. Farmers, warriors, and kings spoke his name as one of hope, a reminder that even the darkest winter could give way to spring. The Nine Realms, though fractured by Loki's deceit and Baldur's death, held in their hearts the certainty that light would overcome darkness. When Ragnarok came, as the prophecies foretold, chaos and destruction swept through the worlds. Fenrir broke free, Jormungand arrived in the seas, and flames engulfed the heavens. Yet even amid this devastation, the threads of destiny wove a new path. After the final battles, when the old world had passed, Baldur and his brother Hr emerged from Hel, radiant once more. The realms were renewed, green and fertile, free of the shadow that had claimed so many lives. Baldur's return symbolized the eternal triumph of life over death, of light over darkness. The gods, though battered and scarred by Ragnarok, rejoiced. The Nine Realms, cleansed and reborn, would flourish under Baldur's guidance. His presence, once again, became a beacon, showing that even the cruel twists of fate, the malice of tricksters, and the sorrow of loss could not extinguish the essence of goodness. In this way, Baldur's story, though marked by tragedy, was ultimately one of hope. His death taught the gods and mortals alike the fragility of life, and his return promised renewal, a cycle of rebirth in which the light of virtue and love would shine forever in the Nine Realms.